Hey guys, Tech Freckle here again. Today I'm going to be going through the box model lessons here. All right, introduction to the box model. Browsers load HTML elements with default position values. This often leads to an unexpected and unwanted user experience while limiting the views you can create. In this lesson, you will learn about the box model, an important concept to understand how elements are positioned and displayed on a website. If you have used HTML and CSS, you have unknowingly seen aspects of the box model. For example, if you have set the background color of an element, you've noticed that the color was applied not only to the area directly behind the element, but also to the area to the right of the element. Also, if you have aligned text, you know it's aligned relative to something. What is that something? All elements on a web page are interpreted by the browser as living inside of a box. This is what is meant by the box model. For example, when you change the background color of an element, you change the background color of its entire box. In this lesson, you learn about the following aspects of the box model: the dimensions of an element's box, the borders of an element's box, the paddings of an element's box, and the margins of an element's box. Let's begin. Take some time to explore the code to the right. See if you can figure out how these following CSS properties impact how an element is displayed: width, height, padding, border, margin, overflow. Okay. Box model. The box model comprises the set of properties that define parts of an element that take up a space on a web page. The model includes the content area's size, width, and height, and the element's padding, border, and margin. The properties include width and height, the width and height of the content area, padding, the amount of space between the content area and the border, the thickness and style of the border surrounding the content area, and padding, margin, the amount of space between the border and the outside edge of the element. Content, padding, border, margin. Right. Was there something else there? Okay, height and width. Elements content has two dimensions, height and width. By default, dimensions of an HTML box are set to hold the raw contents of the box. The CSS height and width properties can be used to modify these default dimensions. In this example, the height and width of paragraph elements are set to 80 pixels and 240 pixels, respectively. The PX in the code above stands for pixels. Okay, we already know that. Pixels allow you to set the exact size of an element's box, width and height. When the width and height of an element are set in pixels, it'll be the same size on all devices. An element that fills a laptop screen will overflow a mobile screen. Add a height of 700 pixels to banner. Set pull quote width to 350. It's already there. Set the dot pull quote width to 350. Set the banner content. Is it all already here? What the hell? And again, if these didn't reset properly. Border is a line that surrounds an element, like a frame around a painting. Borders can be set with a specific width, style, and color. Actually, let's reset this one just to make sure. With the thickness of the border, a border's thickness can be set in pixels or with one of the following keywords: thin, medium, or thick. Style, the design of the border. Web browsers can render any of 10 different styles. Some of these styles include none, dotted, and solid. Color, the color of the border. Web browsers can render colors using a few different formats, including 140 built-in color keywords. All right, border 3 pixels wide, it's solid, and it's coral. In the example above, the border has width 3 pixels, a style of solid, and a color of coral. All three properties are set in one line of code. The default border is medium, none, color, where color is the current border of the element, or current color of the element. If width, style, and or color are not set in the CSS file, the web browser assigns the default value for that property. Okay, in this example, the border style is set to solid and the color set to coral. The width is not set, so it defaults to medium. Add a dotted red border with 1 pixel thickness to all H2 headings. Border What did it want? 1 pixel. Dotted. And it's red. It is. Add a solid white border with a 3 pixel width to the banner content to H1. Border, pixel, solid white. Border radius. Ever since we revealed the borders of boxes, you may have noticed that the borders highlight the true shape of an element's box square. Thanks to CSS, a border doesn't have to be square. You can modify the corners of an element's box or border box with the border radius property. Code in the example above will set all 4 corners of the border to a radius of 5 pixels, i.e. the same curvature that a circle with a radius of 5 pixels would have. You can create a border that is a perfect circle by creating an element with the same width and height, and then setting the radius equal to half the width of the box, which is 50%. Code in the example above creates a div that is a perfect circle. Okay. Set the border radius of banner content H1 to 15 pixels. Whoops. Okay. Additionally, try experimenting radius values. Let's go with, what's the width of this box? 400 pixels. What happens if we do 210 and go beyond? Interesting. Padding. The space between the contents of a box and the borders of a box is known as padding. Padding is like the space between a picture and the frame surrounding it. In CSS, you can modify this space with the padding property. The code in this example puts 10 pixels of space between the content of the paragraph, the text, and the borders on all 4 sides. The padding property is often used to expand the background color and make the content look less cramped. If you want to be more specific about the amount of padding on each side of a box content, you can use the following properties: padding top, right, bottom, left. Each property affects the padding on only one side of the box's content, giving you more flexibility in customization. In the example above, only the bottom side of the paragraph's content will have a padding of 10 pixels. In a single line, set the navigation list element to have 20 pixels of padding. Okay, it's already there again. These things not fucking reset. Look at the red boxes at the bottom of the web page. Set the share A elements to have 14 pixels of padding. Set the top and bottom padding of H2 elements to 20 pixels. And set the left and right padding of H2 elements to 30 pixels. I wonder if it's going to let me do the cheat. So set the top and bottom padding at H2 elements. Where are they? So we're going to go padding, and then 20 pix, 20, 30 pix. It actually worked. Okay, so we haven't learned that part yet. But it let me do it because it passes the test. Cool. All right. Padding shorthand. Here we go. Another implementation of the padding property lets you specify exactly how much padding there should be on each side of the content in a single declaration. A declaration that uses multiple properties as values is known as a shorthand property. Padding shorthand lets you specify all of the padding properties as values on a single line. Top, right, bottom, left. You can specify these properties in a few different ways. 4 values. In the example above, the 4 values 6, 11, 4, 9 correspond to the amount of padding on each side in a clockwise rotation. In order to specify the padding top value, the padding right, the padding bottom, and the padding left. 3 values. Okay, in the left and right sides of the content can be equal. The padding shorthand property allows for 3 values to be specified. The first value sets the top, the second value sets the padding left and padding right, and the third value sets the padding bottom. 2. And finally, if the top and bottom sides can be equal and the left and right sides can be equal, you can specify 2 values. That's what we did in the previous one. The first value sets the padding top and padding bottom values, and the second value sets the padding left and padding right values. Change the individual padding declarations on the H2 selector rule set to use padding shorthand with 2 values. I don't think I even have to change anything if it saved my stuff from the last lesson. We're doing what? H2 padding 2030. Cool, it did. So using 2 values for a padding property, set the padding of the P element to 10 pixels. Oh, it's already done. We didn't reset it. I don't know why this is carrying forward from like the last time I've done this, and it's been reset. It's kind of dumb. But easy enough. Padding 10, 20. Simple, simple. Margin. So far, you've learned about the following components of the box model. Let's reset this to make sure this is actually done. Content, borders, and padding. The fourth and final component of the box model is margin. Margin refers to the space directly outside of the box. The margin property is used to specify the size of the space. The code in the example will place 20 pixels of space on the outside of the paragraph's box on all 4 sides. This means that other HTML elements on the page cannot come within 20 pixels of the paragraph's border. If you want to move even more specific about the amount of margin on each side of a box, you can use the following properties: margin top, right, bottom, left. Each property affects the margin on only one side of the box, providing more flexibility and customization. In the example above, only the right side of the paragraph's box will have a margin of 15 pixels. It's common to see margin values used for a specific side of an element. Set the margin of P elements to 60 pixels. Set the top margin. All right, look at the 3 red boxes at the bottom of the web page. These elements are anchor elements of class share. Set the share A elements to have a margin of 10 pixels. Share A, margin of 10. Okay. Margin shorthand. What if you don't want equal margins on all 4 sides of the box and don't have time to separate properties of each side? You're in luck. Margins can be written as a shorthand property as well. The shorthand syntax for margins is the same as padding. So if you're feeling comfortable with that, skip the instructions. Otherwise, read on to learn how to use margin shorthand. All right. We know how to do that. Using 2 values. Oh, let's reset it. Using 2 values, set the H2 top and bottom margins to 30 and left and right to 20. H2 margin 30, 20. The margin property also lets you center content. However, you must follow a few syntax requirements. Take a look at the following example. Margin 0 auto. In the example above, margin 0 auto will center the divs in their containing elements. The 0 sets the top and bottom margins to 0 pixels. The auto value instructs the browser to adjust the left and right margins until the element is centered within its containing element. In order to center an element, a width must be set for the element, otherwise the width of the div will be automatically set to the full width of its containing element, like the body. For example, it's not possible to center an element that takes up the full width of a page, since the width of the page can change due to the display and or browser window size. In the example above, the width of the div is set to 400 pixels, which is less than the width of most screens. This will cause the div to center within a containing element that is greater than 400 pixels wide. Set the width of the pull quote class elements to 350 pixels. Set this thing. It's so stupid that I have to fucking change that every single time. In one line, set the vertical top and bottom margins of the dot pull quote to 0 and auto. Okay. Set the vertical margins of the main element to 0. It's looking better. Margin collapse. As you have seen, padding is space added inside an element's border, while margin is space added outside an element's border. One additional difference is that top and bottom margins, also called vertical margins, collapse, while top and bottom padding does not. Horizontal margins, left and right, like padding, are always displayed and added together. For example, if two divs with IDs div1 and div2 are next to each other, they will be as far apart as the sum of their adjacent margins. In this example, the space between image 1 and image 2 borders is 40 pixels. The right margin of image 1, 20 pixels, and the left margin of image 2, 20 pixels, add to make a total margin of 40. Unlike horizontal margins, vertical margins do not add. Instead, the larger of the two vertical margins sets the distance between adjacent elements. In this example, the vertical margin between image 1 and image 2 elements is 30 pixels. Although the sum of the margins is 50, the margins collapse, so the space is only dependent on the image 1 bottom margin. It may be helpful to think of collapsing vertical margins as short person trying to push a taller person. The taller person has longer arms and can easily push the short person, while the person with short arms cannot reach the person with long arms. Study the graphic displayed to the right. Elements A and B have 20 pixels of horizontal margin, the sum of each element's margin. Elements A and C have 30 pixels of vertical margin, the top margin of element C. Margin 10, 10, margin 30 and 10, so 10 on the sides and 30 on top, so that is the 30 pixels, and then this one's like 10. Okay, so that's how. All right, minimum and maximum height and width. Set this just in case. Because a web page can be viewed through displays of differing screen size, the content on the web page can suffer from those changing in size. Or from those changes in size. To avoid this problem, CSS offers two properties that can limit how narrow or how wide an element's box can be sized to. Min width, this property ensures a minimum width of an element's box. Max width, this property ensures a maximum width of an element's box. In the example above, the width of all paragraphs will not shrink below 300, nor will the width exceed 600. Min, max, okay. Content like text can become difficult to read when a browser window is narrowed or expanded. These two properties ensure that content is legible by limiting the minimum and maximum width of an element, and also limit the minimum and maximum height of an element. This property ensures a minimum height and maximum height. Okay, in the example above, the height of all paragraphs will not shrink below 150, and the height will not exceed 300. What will happen to the contents of an element's box if the max height property is set too low? It's possible for content to spill outside the box, resulting in content that is not legible. You'll learn how to work around this issue in the next exercise. All right, set the minimum width of the P element to 200. In width 200. After you've done this, successfully resize the browser to notice how the paragraphs box will no longer shrink below 200. Okay. Next, set the maximum width of the P element to 800. Do then successfully resize the browser to notice how the paragraphs box will no longer expand beyond 800 pixels. Okay. And so I'll set the minimum height of P elements to 200. You've done this successfully. Resize the browser. Notice how the height of paragraphs will no longer shrink below 200 pixels. Let's see if this actually will work. Which one's it doing? Oh, not the browser itself. The little mini browser. Let's see. Right. Install CSS set the maximum height of P elements to 300. After you've done that, successfully resize the browser and notice how the height of paragraphs box will no longer expand beyond 300 pixels. You should see your text overflowing in the next exercise. We will fix that. Okay. Yeah. To the other elements. Overflow. All of the components of the box model comprise an element size. For example, an image that has the following dimensions is 364 pixels wide and 244 pixels tall. 300 pixels wide, 200 pixels tall, 10 pixels of padding on the left and right, 10 on top and bottom, 2 pixels of border on the left and right, 2 pixels of border on the top and bottom, 20 pixels margin on the left and right, and 10 pixels margin on the top and bottom. Total dimension is 364 by 244, are calculated by adding all of the vertical dimensions together and all the horizontal dimensions together. Sometimes these components result in an element that is larger than the parent's containing area. How can we ensure that we can view all of an element that is larger than its parent's containing area? The overflow property controls what happens to content that spills or overflows outside its box. The most commonly used values are hidden. When set to this value, any content that overflows will be hidden from view. Scroll. When set to this value, a scroll bar will be added to the element's box so that the rest of the content can be viewed by scrolling. When set to this value, the overflow content will be displayed outside of the containing element. Note this is the default value. Okay, so visible, hidden, and scroll. In the example above, if any of the paragraph content overflows, perhaps a user resizes their browser window, a scroll bar will appear so that users can view the rest of the content. The overflow property is set on a parent element to instruct a web browser on how to render the child elements. For example, if a div's overflow property is set to scroll, all children of this div will display overflowing content with a scroll bar. For more in-depth look at overflow, including additional properties like overflow X and overflow Y that separate out the horizontal and vertical values, head over to the MDN. In order to see the impact of overflow scroll, first change the height of the main element to 1000 pixels. Okay. Set the overflow of the main to scroll. When you scroll down, a second scroll bar should appear over the paragraph section. You may have to expand the browser component in order to see this behavior correctly. There it is. Resetting defaults. All major web browsers have a default style sheet they use in the absence of an external style sheet. These default style sheets are known as user agent style sheets. In this case, the term user agent is a technical term for the browser. User agent style sheets often have default CSS rules that set default values for padding and margin. This affects how the browser displays HTML elements, which can make it difficult for a developer to design or style a web page. Many developers choose to reset these default values so that they can truly work with a clean slate. Code in the example above resets the default margin and padding values of all HTML elements. It is often the first CSS rule in an external style sheet. Note that both properties are set to 0. When these properties are set to 0, they do not require a unit of measurement. Okay. Reset the default margin and padding values for the body. What happens to the web page in the browser? What? Reset. Reset the default margin and padding values for the body. Visibility. Elements can be hidden from view with the visibility property. The visibility property can be set to one of the following values: hidden, visible, collapse. Visibility hidden. Example above, the list item with the class of future will be hidden from view in the browser. Keep in mind, however, that user can still view the contents of the list. Example, donate. By viewing the source code in the browser. Furthermore, the web page will only hide the contents of the element. It will still leave an empty space where the element is intended to display. Note, what's the difference between display none and visibility hidden? An element with display none will be completely removed from the web page. An element with visibility hidden, however, will not be visible on the web page, but the space reserved for it will. Take a look at the list items in the index. Notice that the item donate has a class of donate. Add the class selector rule set for donate. Let's see. Visibility hidden. In this lesson, we covered the 4 properties of the box model: height and width and padding and borders and margins. Understanding the box model is an important step towards learning more advanced HTML and CSS topic. Let's take a minute to review what you learned. The box model comprises a set of properties used to create space around and between the HTML elements. The height and width of a content area can be set in pixels or percentages. Borders surround the content area and padding of an element. The color, style, and thickness of a border can be set with CSS properties. Padding is the space between the content area and the border. It can be set in pixels or percent. Margin is the amount of space outside of an element's border. Horizontal margins add, so the total space between the borders of adjacent elements is equal to the sum of the right margin of one element and the left margin of the adjacent element. Vertical margins collapse, so the space vertically adjacent elements is equal to the larger margin. Margin 0 auto horizontally centers an element inside of its parent content area if it has a width. The overflow property can be set to display, hidden, or scroll and dictates how HTML content or will render content that overflows its parent's content area. The visibility property can hide or show elements. Make some adjustments to the code in the code editor. See if you can improve the appearance of the page by changing the following properties. Let's take the quiz. It's probably going to be a retake because this thing has saved everything. It did not. Interesting. Why change the box model? The last lesson focused on the most important aspects of the box model: box dimensions, borders, padding, and margins. The box model, however, has an awkward limitation regarding box dimensions. This limitation is best illustrated with an example. Hello world. Border 1, height, width, padding. In the example above, a heading element's box has a solid black 1 pixel thick borders. The height of the box is 200 pixels, while the width of the box is 300. Padding at 10 pixels has also been set on all 4 sides of the box's content. Unfortunately, under the current box model, the border thickness and padding will affect the dimensions of the box. The 10 pixels of padding increases the height of the box to 220 and the width to 320. Next, the 1 pixel thick border increases the height to 222 and the width to 322. Under this box model, the border thickness and padding are added to the overall dimensions of the box. This makes it difficult to accurately size a box. Over time, this can also make all of a web page's content difficult to position and manage. In this brief lesson, you'll learn how to use different techniques that avoids this problem altogether. We'll be using the app provided to demonstrate how to work with the box model. Click next to continue. All right. Box model content box. Many properties in CSS have a default value and don't have to be explicitly set in the style sheet. For example, the default font weight of text is normal, but this property value pair is not typically specified in the style sheet. The same can be said about the box model that browsers assume. In CSS, the box sizing property controls the type of box model and the browser should use when interpreting a web page. The default value for this property is content box. This is the same box model that is affected by border thickness and padding. Study the diagram to the right. It illustrates the default box model used by the browser. Content box. When you're done, continue to the next exercise. Actual rendered width, content, padding, border. Okay. Box model border box. Fortunately, we can reset the entire box model and specify a new one, border box. The code in the example above resets the box model to border box for all HTML elements. This new box model avoids the dimensional issues that exist in the former box model you learned about. In this box model, the height and width of the box will remain fixed. The border thickness and padding will be included inside the box, which means the overall dimensions of the box do not change. Box sizing, border box 1-150, 200. So in the example above, the height of the box would remain 150 and the width would remain 200. The border thickness and padding would remain entirely inside of the box. Study the diagram to the right. It illustrates the border box model from the code above. Pay attention to how the total width, 200, and padding affect the content width of the element. Okay, the width property is set as the actual rendered width of the element. The content area is automatically sized based on the remaining width after border and padding has been subtracted. Okay. The new box model. Now that you know about the new box model, it's actually implemented in the browser. Let's reset this thing to make sure. It's that simple. In the example above, the universal selector targets all elements on the web page and sets their box model a border box. In style CSS, change the box model for all elements on the page. Sizing, border box. All right. You probably didn't see a difference on the web page to the right. That's okay. The new box model simply makes sure that the dimensions of the elements remains the same regardless of border width and padding. Okay. Review. Changing the box model. In this lesson, you learned about an important limitation of the box default model or default box model. The box dimensions are affected by border thickness and padding. Let's review what you learned. In the default box model, box dimensions are affected by border thickness and padding. The box sizing property controls the box model used by the browser. The default value of the box sizing property is content box. The value of the new box model is border box. Border box model is not affected by border thickness or padding. Take some time to experiment with your new knowledge of the box model. When you're done, proceed to the next units. All right. I believe there's a quiz now. Yes. All right. Which property should fill the blank in the following CSS code snippet? Border. Which of the following will set the vertical padding to 20 and horizontal padding to 40? Padding 2040. What is the name of the space between the content container and the border? Oh, wait, between the content and padding. Yeah. Which of the following CSS properties controls the size of an element's content? The height and width. Which of the following will set the right padding to 10, bottom 15, left 20, and top 25? So it should be 25, 10, 15, 20. 25, 10, 15, 20. There we go. Assuming the box element below is the only element on the page, what is the total height calculated by using the given CSS properties? Assuming the box element below is the only element on the page, what is the total height calculated by using the given CSS? Oh, okay. It'd be 145, 147. Which the following will set the top and bottom margins to 15, left and right margins to 30. Should be 15, 30. There we go. Which of the following accurately explains the CSS code below? Width of 300, margin 0 auto. Div headline elements will have a width of 300 pixels and no margins. Be horizontally, vertically centered on the page. So with vertical margin 0 and be horizontally centered. Yes. What property affects the space between the border of an element and its surrounding elements? The margin. Which of the following properties controls how to display content that is too large for its container overflow? Which of the following is not part of the CSS box model? Div. In the sample code above, the element with ID 1 is directly above element with ID 2 in the HTML document. How much space between the border of element 1 and border of element 2? 30. Cool. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Yes, we don't. We can just continue on. I thought there was a project after this. Box model in DevTools. View and edit an HTML elements box using Chrome DevTools. Introduction. All HTML elements are boxes made up of 4 components: a content container, padding, border, and margin. In our box model lesson, we introduce these 4 properties and use them to position elements on a website. If you have not taken this lesson, we recommend you do so now before continuing. We've already done that. In this article, we will introduce how Google's Chrome tools can be used to view the box around each element on a page. View box model dimensions with DevTools. You can use Google Chrome's DevTools to view the box around every element on the web page. There are a few different ways to open DevTools depending on your platform. Control-Shift-I works. Command plus Option plus I. Oh, there's the Windows one. Control-Shift-I. Use whichever element works best for you. When you have DevTools open, navigate to the Elements tab. In this tab, you can view all the elements on the current page. From this view, you can select the element of interest, which will open a new column to the right side of DevTools. Select the tab labeled Computed on the top right of the rightmost column. The selected elements box should appear at the top right of the pane. Hovering over each property of the box will cause the property to be highlighted in the web page. If you know the element you want to inspect, going through all the steps listed above is unnecessary. Instead, you can right-click the element you want to observe and select the Inspect button. This will display DevTools on the right side of the browser with the element selected in the Elements tab. To view the Elements box, you can select the Computed tab. If you'd like more info or refresh on how to use Google DevTools, take a look at this video. Exercise 1. Visit a website's box model dimensions. Complete the following steps with the current browser view. In a new tab, navigate to the Codecademy Wikipedia page. Right-click or control-click simultaneously the contents navigation box displayed in the image below. Select Inspect. Select the Computer tab at the right or at the top of the rightmost column. Hover over the different properties in the logo's box. Corresponding space of the web page should be highlighted when you do this. Modify box dimensions. Now that you know how to view the box of an element, we'll modify the box's values with DevTools. To modify the value of the double box, click the property value, assign it a new number, and press Enter. You can also adjust the value incrementally by double-clicking the value and using the up or down arrow keys. The image above, the border on each side is set to 1 and padding is set to 7. These values can be changed by double-clicking the values in the box and assigning them new numbers or using the up or down arrow keys on your keyboard. Note, if you inspect an element and find that the border is set to hyphen, adding a numerical value will not make a border appear. The border color, style, and width must be set in the CSS document in order to see the border. Exercise 2, modify a website's box model dimensions. Pick up where you left off on exercise 1. Double-click the top padding element. Use the up-down arrow keys to adjust the element's padding. Observe how the appearance changes on the web page. Change the left margin to 200. Observe how the element's appearance changes. Remember, the changes you make in DevTools are not saved. If you're using DevTools to make adjustments to a personal project, make sure to adjust the values in the HTML and CSS documents. All right. Easy peasy. We've done that all before. I'm not going to watch this video.